the last phase and a half, it seems like the MCU has been in shambles for many people out there. For me personally, there's been some projects that I've absolutely adored and thought were great, and some others that didn't totally work for me in the end of the day, but depending on who you are, it seems like certain shows work for others and some don't, and same thing is going along with the movies, where we have this back and forth of Marvel's back, no they're not, Marvel's back, no they're not, and now, this week, other than just the Loki Season 2 finale, we also have The Marvels, which I just got done watching. I really liked the first trailer, but none of the other marketing pieces had gotten me too excited for this, which sucks to say because I really like Brie Larson in the role as Captain Marvel. I know a lot of you guys just clicked off this video. I don't care. And the same thing goes for Kamala Khan. I loved her in Miss Marvel, whatever you thought about that show. I thought she was the biggest and brightest spot of that. And Monica Rambeau was an absolute delight in Wanda Vision. So it gives me pleasure to say that The Marvels is surprisingly good. And in fact, it's good to the point where I would heavily recommend this. Now, is this one of the deepest MCU films? No, like just getting this out of the way. This is a very light and breezy movie that doesn't give too much emotional depth to the character. We will talk about that. But this kind of reminds me, like, for comic book fans, one of those comics that you would walk by at the stand and see 3 of your favorite heroes or 3 interesting characters that would make for a fun team-up film, which is exactly what this is. And while I do think that there could have been a little bit more depth, again, we will talk about that because this film is not perfect. I definitely have major issues with this, but it's a fun and entertaining movie. And I think this is actually one that should have come out in the summertime, because that's kind of the feel I got for this, is a fun, breezy summer flick. And now it's coming out in November, and it's still a fun, entertaining blockbuster, but that's about what I got from here. And it's absolutely a step up from the first Captain Marvel in like every way. There's such personality and style in here, and I think a lot of that goes to Nia Decosta. But I'm excited to talk about the Marvels today. This will be a non-spoiler review, just flat out off the top as well. Before we dive any deeper into this, I'm gonna stay away pretty vague from everything. You are safe, do not worry. I'm not gonna be here to spoil, and specifically I'll tell you this right now, you do not want to be spoiled on the end credit scene. If you're one of those people that do not like spoilers, do not want to know anything before seeing this, you should probably rush out and see this opening night. No matter what you think about this movie, the end credit scene is a big game changer, and I actually got really excited, and it finally felt like we were getting that clear direction on what was going on within the end credit scene. There's only one, so they only got to stay for one, and of course the finale of this movie. So take that as what you will. Those are the housekeeping rules. Really liked both those parts, and I think a lot of you guys will as well. So when you see the movie this week, please leave your thoughts as well down there. And without further ado, it's time to dive into The Marvels, which is about Carol Danvers, who gets her powers entangled with those of Kamala Khan and Monica Rambeau, forcing them to work together to save the universe. Starting with my pros, the biggest thing I have to say is the chemistry between the Marvel team is fantastic. Kamala Khan, Captain Marvel, and Monica Rambeau just have this delightful chemistry right off the top. And I thought they were the shining spot of this entire thing. You knew that probably from the marketing that that's what it was going to be, but I couldn't help but just smile every time they were on screen, whether they were working together, fighting together, or arguing together, or in general, just having fun. Like, these bonding moments are the things that I live for, and it's the certain things that I've really loved. We get to see in team-up films, such as, of course, the first Avengers film, Avengers Age of Ultron. And among the likes, when you go even and look at Guardians of the Galaxy, it's these smaller team-up movies that just put a delightful smile on my face when we get to see the characters just chilling and hanging out and getting to see these 3 people who 2 of them know each other. One is being introduced to this entire world and to the grander scheme of it all. And it's really entertaining. And their performances, I think, are great. Now, naysayers have been hating on Brie Larson ever since the first Captain Marvel. I have loved her no matter what. I think ever since her performance in Room, she can do no harm to me. And I thought she was decent in the first Captain Marvel, but I don't think any of the issues were honestly her. That was just poorly written on how the character was written. And I thought in Endgame, she was a little bit better, but could have been stronger. This is the version of Captain Marvel I've wanted. This is flat out the version I've wanted. And I think this is such a big bonus that I think people who have never been introduced to this character before will really like Brie Larson, and I think will really come to see the warmness that Brie Larson can bring to a role. She's not as hardened, she's not as wooden in this entire role. She actually brings this delightfulness, this heroicness, and none of this stoic bullshit or any of this cockiness that I thought she had a little bit of in Endgame I just thought she was delightful in here. And this was the Brie Larson that I was excited to see when she was casted as Captain Marvel. So that is an absolute big plus there. Teyonah Parris, I have just been very impressed with every single performance she's given. I thought she was great in Wanda Vision. And I think her as Monica Rambeau is just great. And Kamala Khan. Iman is one of the best and shining spots that Kevin Feige has ever brought into the MCU. And if you loved her in Miss Marvel, you're going to absolutely love her as Kamala Khan. The way that she interacts with these characters are just great. And I actually do want to say that if you're worried that you've never seen, say, WandaVision or Miss Marvel, you actually don't have to see those. In fact, I would even say if you're worried about rushing to watch them before seeing this, you don't have to. If you go and see this movie, you're going to be fine. You're going to learn some of the details of certain things and how these characters interact and what's going on. Even, say, the first Captain Marvel, if you've never seen it, you really don't have to. There's clearly evidence that if you've done the work and you've watched those things, just like most Marvel movies, then you're going to appreciate a little bit more here and there and understand. But in this reference, I actually think this is a movie that, while it's tying together 3 overall big narratives from the MCU, WandaVision, Kamala Khan's Miss Marvel, and of course the first Captain Marvel movie, the way that they're kind of like all tying them in actually works. And I think if you've never watched those, after watching this movie, if you like Kamala Khan, you're going to go and watch her show. And the same thing goes for Monica Rambeau. If you want to know more about her and how she got her powers, you're going to go watch WandaVision. And Captain Marvel, the same thing. Like, after watching this, I kind of have a little bit more appreciation for the first Captain Marvel. Not saying it fixes my issues. I mean, that's still a movie that I will probably barely ever rewatch in my life, but I thought it was a great added bonus to how they brought that in. And I was very interested because this is one of the first times where the show's really bleeding into the movie, in fact. So that's a big pro. You are safe. I promise you. Alongside that, if we're just speaking about the performances, I thought Nick Fury was just always great. Samuel Jackson is just a delightfulness in this world, and his, again, just chemistry with this cast works great. I would have liked to see a little bit more of him and Kamala Khan, but the little things that we get with him and Iman are fantastic. So we get the great cast, right? Excellent stuff. Then we jump into the directing, which I think is one thing that I was very interested in. Nia Decosta did a great job on the Candyman remake, reboot of some sorts, and I thought, as breezy as that film was, I wish it was a little bit longer. You'll hear maybe that same complaint on this movie, but I thought her direction brought such a personality and style to Candyman that was absolutely needed, because the first film very much has that, and I always thought that a lot of the later sequels kind of lack that. And the same thing goes for one of her previous films, Little Woods, which I think, again, is one of the most smart and unique little indie films. But again, its personality is on its shoulders. And I think Nia Decosta showcases here why she is a talent to be looked after. She is the youngest director to direct anything in the MCU thus far. And I think her creative mind infused a lot of unique aspects into the Marvels itself. And there's certain elements of this space adventure that they go on that might work for others, might not work. Some of it didn't work for me, but I have to take a big smile and appreciation for those big swings. But even if it wasn't for the big swings, it's the way that she actually has the characters interacting and the way that the story goes about. As I've mentioned, this is a very light and breezy MCU film that will not be very high on my ranking, which is coming later this week. Look forward to that. But it won't be that high. It's very much in the middle of the MCU, but we have 45 projects now, including the shows. So that's not really saying a lot. When you're in the middle of the MCU, that's still fairly good. It's a great, even at times. So for me, Nia DaCosta, big win. Really loved her directing. Thought she was fantastic. And I would hope to see a little bit more of her in the MCU. I think her style really interjects and brings a lot of what Kamala Khan's Miss Marvel had with that style, alongside giving Captain Marvel her own style, and of course just bringing a little bit more Monica Rambeau in here. And you can very much tell her love, she's talked about in a lot of interviews, how much she loves this universe and how much she loves some of the comics, and you can really much see that. There's a lot of comic nuance to it, and it really did feel like, I know sometimes we'll say, oh, it feels like all these characters jumped right out of the page onto the big screen. That is actually very much the truth when talking about the Marvels. This very much feels that way in good and bad ways. But I think the good very much outweighs the bad on that. And the musical choices plus the action scenes were great. The music's always great, usually in MCU films, but the action I've always been a little bit hit or miss on. I thought Shang-Chi is still like some of the best hand-to-hand choreographed, but the fact that like if you've seen the trailers, you know that like they keep switching spots. Their powers are entangled. Every time one person uses the power, they switch spots instantly. And the way that they have to learn to work together like really just put a smile on my face, but it's the fact of how the action really works. Like one of the first major action sequences in here, you've probably seen a little bit in the trailer, was just my jam, my cup of tea, and a lot of fun. And again, not something that you typically see in MCU films. And I very much appreciated the action that they went for, and it feels great, finally. Touching on a couple more things, because one of the big conversations on a lot of MCU projects is the visual effects. I thought most of the visual effects in here were actually pretty damn good. I would say 89% of them were like, damn, this is great. And the other ones were like, that probably could have been a little bit better. But whatever. Alongside that though, I do want to jump to my issues now because I have a lot. Now, as I talked to most of the actors, there's one I didn't talk about too much, and that was Zawe Ashton, which I might be mispronouncing that. I apologize. She plays Dar-Benn. Terrible villain. Probably one of the worst villains in the entire MCU, and that's honestly saying a lot. Like bottom 3, bottom 4, bottom 5 maybe. I might be forgetting some that I'm just not including there, but nothing to the performance. The performance was good. It was just seems chopped to shit. And that's actually one thing that I'll say. We'll come back to the villain in a second. But the whole film, I keep mentioning is light and breezy. Definitely felt like there was a lot more deeper emotional parts in here that were cut. And listening to Nia Decosta talk about the filmmaking of this, obviously in the end of the day, it's going to come down to what Kevin Feige and the studio wants. It definitely felt like the film shifted and changed the dynamic of what it is. And if you listen to any way of how movies are made, there's usually like 12 different cuts of the movie and 12 different versions of the film. And it's very fascinating to see, like, just in the editing bay, how much you can change a movie up. And I imagine that this film was very much made in the editing room to make for a more light and breezy and fun blockbuster like that. But I can't sit there and deny that I felt, for as short as this film was, there should have been at least 20 to 25 more minutes of this film. And maybe it would have lagged a little bit, because I will tell you, all those Dar-Benn sequences, woof, they were rushed. And maybe that's because the character is so one-dimensional. Maybe there were more scenes to this character that there should have been more development to this all, because there is an intriguing layer and aspect to why this villain is doing what they are doing, and I thought that was thought-provoking, but they never dove into it. And again, went back to very much a lot of the stuff that happens in the earlier 2 phases of Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, which in a way this movie kind of reminded me of some of the earlier MCU films, phase 1 specifically. And I found that to be, again, a pro and a con, but a lot of that just goes down to I wanted more development with the characters discussing. I wanted more time with them interacting. We get a lot of it in here. I mean, they're in the movie together for at least like 90% of it. But there's a couple moments in here where it seems like they're about to argue, and then all of a sudden it cuts, and it's like, whoa, where are we going with this? Like, they don't argue anymore. It's just like they're apologizing. And it felt like there was a deeper conversation to be had in some of these sequences. Again, it's really hard to talk about without getting into spoilers, but like one sequence in particular I'd like people to look at is after this giant battle on this like water type kingdom planet thing. You go and they start talking, and I felt like this conversation was going to be a lot longer, and it wasn't. And it kind of just cut to one thing, and then everyone was all fine. It's really, again, really hard to talk and be vague, but that was the one thing that I was like, oh, okay. And then there was a couple moments I started thinking about on the way home that I was like, there could have been more development there. There could have been a little bit more development there. And it doesn't make the film terrible by any means. It just makes the film a little bit like, okay, I would have liked to see a little bit more in all those moments. So I think the film just lacked a little bit of that oomph, that emotionality that I think at this point we needed a little bit more with Captain Marvel. And you definitely get it here, but I would have liked to have seen it go all the way. And a lot of that, again, ties back into Dar-Benn and how they handle that character, because there's just not a lot of greatness in there. I'm very disappointed in that, because I think the actress is a great actress, but in this film in particular, it just didn't click for me in what this villain was trying to do. And I think a lot of people are going to walk away just being, yeah, that was a very forgettable one at best. Like I mentioned, Nia Decosta definitely swings for the fences in certain sequences in here. Two in particular that are going to be talked about with MCU fans. One being with the Flurkins, the cat. Not going to get much more into that. Don't know what they were trying to do with that sequence. The second thing is that planet I was talking about, the water planet, the water kingdom planet. Can't really talk much more about that because there's an element to it that didn't fully work for me and kind of took me out of the moment. But that is the MCU. The MCU's been experimenting and doing its little things, and for me, I like this movie. I liked it, and I think it's surprisingly good. There will be naysayers out there. There will be people who hate this movie for no freaking reason. There will be people who hate this movie for multiple reasons. I barely talked to anyone, but the people that I did get to talk to leaving the theater, we all basically felt the exact same way. That was a lot of fun. Wish it was a little bit deeper. But finally, we have a kind of a clear direction of where we're going into the MCU, hopefully, and that the end credit scene and the ending of this film were fantastic. The rest of the movie was a blast. The three girls are fantastic. I want to see more of them interacting with one another, and that's like one of my biggest things is that I can't wait to see them all together on the big screen again. And just in general, them itself, and that Brie Larson is phenomenal as Captain Marvel. I really cannot emphasize that enough. She is so damn good in this role, and it's primarily in this movie, and I think this will make a lot more people respect her in this role. Please, Brie Larson, stay. I mean it. And protect Kamala Khan at all reasons. So, with that said, guys, I'm going to give the Marvels a beep. Thank you so much again, guys, for watching this. Again, this was my non-spoiler review. I will be doing an MCU ranking with the movies and shows later this week after the Loki Season 2 finale. I will also be covering Loki Season 2's finale on Thursday, so look forward to that review. I'm very excited to be giving you guys that. I'm skipping a screener for it, so be warned. Like, you guys got to be excited for that. And, of course, guys, until next time, just make sure to keep watching movies and having fun. So, stay classy.